You have come here carrying a question heavy in your chest, a question that gnaws at the edges of your identity, a question that lingers in the shadows of every relationship you have endured. Why is it that those who feel most deeply, who sense the invisible currents of suffering, who are called empaths, so often become the ones blamed for the very pain they never created? To answer this, I must not speak to you as a distant scholar, nor as a physician of the psyche in sterile analysis, but as if I am standing before you in this gathering of souls, where we breathe together in the mystery of life and shadow. Let us enter the subterranean world of the psyche, the archetypal underworld, and walk there with open eyes. The empath is, in truth, a figure who stands at the threshold of two worlds. On one side lies the personal realm, the everyday struggles of relationships, of families, of societies that do not understand. On the other side lies the deep collective unconscious, where archetypes swim like ancient creatures in the dark waters. The empath is not simply a sensitive person. The empath is one who has inherited the archetype of the wounded healer, one who is drawn again and again into the suffering of others, who feels compelled to carry burdens that were never their own. But here lies the paradox. The very gift of sensitivity is what turns into a curse when projected upon by others. It is as if a mirror stands before humanity, reflecting its wounds, and rather than embracing the reflection, humanity shatters the mirror. You see, when a person is confronted with their own shadow, with the denied aspects of themselves, with anger, jealousy, pain, despair, or cruelty, they cannot admit. They will look for a vessel to contain it. The empath, whose nature is receptive, whose skin is thin and porous, becomes that vessel. Projection is one of the most primitive defenses of the human psyche. What we cannot tolerate in ourselves, we cast onto another. This is why you, who sense the anguish of others, so often become the scapegoat. It is not your pain they place upon you, it is theirs. But because you are able to feel it, because you carry the burden of collective wounds in your nervous system, you begin to confuse their pain with your own. You become guilty for what you never committed. Imagine a dream. You are walking through a forest, and every tree whispers the secrets of the people you know. Some whisper their loneliness, some their rage, some their shame. You walk quietly, absorbing their voices, until suddenly they accuse you. You are the reason I feel this way. You made me suffer. It is your fault. The dream feels absurd. And yet, this is the reality of the empath. The forest is not imaginary. It is life. Every soul projects what it cannot hold. And you, like a tree, with roots that drink from poisoned soil, absorb it, and because you are unconscious of this archetypal drama, you take the blame, you bow under it, you carry it like a cross. But to understand why empaths are blamed, we must go deeper into the archetypal pattern of the scapegoat. In every ancient culture, the scapegoat was chosen by the tribe to carry away collective sin. The animal was laden with guilt, symbolic or real, and sent into the wilderness Humanity repeats this ritual unconsciously whenever a group or individual is overwhelmed with unresolved shadow. They seek a figure to bear it. The empath, by archetypal destiny, is a natural scapegoat. Why? Because the empath has the capacity to hold pain without instantly retaliating. You absorb, you forgive, you seek to understand, and thus to the unconscious mind of others. You seem like the perfect vessel into which they can pour their unresolved wounds. They cannot pour it into someone who resists. They cannot pour it into someone who fights. They pour it into you, because your very compassion appears to grant permission. Here, however, is the hidden danger. The empath begins to identify with the projection. If enough people accuse you, if enough voices whisper the same lie, eventually you begin to believe it. You take responsibility for what you never caused. You atone for sins that were never yours, and in doing so, you lose the boundary between yourself and others. You dissolve into a blur of guilt, shame, and psychic exhaustion. You no longer know where your soul ends and another begins. And this collapse of boundaries is the true prison. I've seen in dreams of patience, and perhaps you have dreamt this too, the image of standing before a tribunal, faceless judges, accusing, pointing, demanding confession for crimes uncommitted. This is the archetype of collective blame. The empath dreams this because unconsciously they live it. Every accusation is the voice of the collective shadow saying, "Do not expose me. Do not reveal my darkness. Instead, carry it. Be the guilty one." And in such moments, the empath must awaken to the symbolic truth. You are not on trial for your own sins. You are on trial for daring to reflect the unconscious of others. Let us pause here and feel the weight of this truth. It is not only psychological, it is mystical. For the empath does not merely feel what is visible in the ordinary world. The empath often senses the archetypal patterns, the hidden forces behind behavior, the ancestral wounds inherited through generations. You may find yourself weeping for sorrows you cannot name. You may find yourself restless in the presence of unspoken tension. You may find yourself sick in the body because of what another refuses to acknowledge. This is not illusion. This is the resonance of your psyche with the collective unconscious. And because you reveal it merely by existing, others blame you, for you become the messenger of what they deny. Remember, in myth, the messenger is often slain. Cassandra, who foresaw the fall of Troy, was cursed to never be believed. The prophet is stoned, not because they lie, but because they reveal too much. Likewise, the empath is blamed not because they harm, but because they feel too much. You expose the wound by sensing it. And when people see their wound mirrored, they recoil, they rage, they accuse. You become the wound bearer, the living scapegoat. But here I must guide you deeper still into the paradox that Jung himself lived. The empath must learn that the very thing that makes them blamed is the thing that can set them free. For in every projection lies a key. If you are blamed for anger that is not yours, it reveals the anger of the other. If you are blamed for weakness you never embodied, it reveals the hidden weakness of the other. Every accusation is a map to the shadow of those around you. And when you can see this, not with bitterness, not with arrogance, but with clarity, you begin to withdraw your unconscious participation in the scapegoat ritual. You no longer carry blindly. You stand and say inwardly, this belongs to you, not to me. This act of discernment, this act of psychic separation is the beginning of individuation for the empath. Do you feel, even now, as I speak, the trembling between victimhood and liberation? This trembling is the threshold. You cannot simply discard the empathic gift. You cannot suddenly build walls of stone around your heart. That would betray your nature, but you can awaken to the truth of projection. You can awaken to the archetypal drama in which you have been cast. You can step out of the role of scapegoat and into the role of conscious witness. For the empath, who witnesses without absorbing, who discerns without condemning, who feels without identifying, becomes a healer, not enslaved but free. And such a soul is no longer easy prey for blame. As I look into your eyes, I must remind you that this journey is not an escape from pain, but an alchemical transformation of it. The empath does not conquer by resisting projection alone, but by transmuting it, by holding the mirror without breaking, by reflecting the shadow without becoming the shadow. This is the mystery of the wounded healer. The wound becomes the vessel through which light enters, and so the blame, unjust as it is, becomes the very pressure that awakens your consciousness. Without it, perhaps you would never have learned to distinguish between what belongs to you and what does not. In the next movement of our exploration, we must descend further into the unconscious to understand how dreams, symbols, and inner figures reveal this dynamic of blame, and how the empath's psyche becomes the stage upon which the drama of collective pain plays itself out. But for now, I leave you with this. You are not guilty of the pain you carry. You are the witness of a deeper archetypal truth, and your liberation begins not by rejecting your sensitivity, but by awakening to the hidden ritual in which humanity has bound you. Let us now descend deeper, for what I have revealed so far is but the surface of a profound subterranean river that runs beneath your existence. When you ask why empaths are always blamed, you are truly asking why the innocent are chosen to carry the burdens of the unconscious, why those who did not commit the wound are made to bleed for it. The answer lies not only in social dynamics, not only in projection, but in the very mythic architecture of the psyche. For the psyche is not a blank slate. It is a stage, an ancient theater where archetypes dance, fight, and repeat dramas older than civilization itself. And you, as an empath, are chosen by destiny to embody certain archetypes more vividly than others. You carry the resonance of the sacrificial lamb, the healer, the mediator between worlds. Thus, your life is never free from the ritual of blame. Consider your dreams. Have you noticed how often you are chased accused or placed in situations where you are required to justify yourself, though you have done nothing wrong. The dream world does not invent randomly. It reflects the myth that governs your waking life. The courtroom, the mob, the accusing finger, these are symbols of the collective shadow demanding that you bear its weight. The dream is not punishing you, it is awakening you to the pattern, and until you recognize the pattern, you remain ensnared, reliving the role of scapegoat both in sleep and in waking. This is why in therapy I have often listened to souls who recount stories of inexplicable guilt. A child who grew up in a family where anger brewed like thunder was blamed for disturbing the peace. The empathic child absorbed the rage, sensing it long before it erupted. And when it finally did, the parents projected it back onto the child. See what you made me do. That sentence, simple and cruel, becomes a spell. The empath carries it for decades, even into adulthood, believing that they are always the cause of disruption, always at fault for the unhappiness of others. The pattern of being blamed for what was never theirs is not merely familial, it is archetypal, woven into the very collective, unconscious. But now we must look at the deeper psychology of why this happens. When two psyches meet, there is an exchange of energy, conscious and unconscious. The empath, being porous, receives not only the conscious words, but the unconscious vibrations of the other. You may feel heaviness in your chest before a word is spoken, or confusion in your mind when standing beside someone who is deeply conflicted. This sensitivity is not weakness, it is perception on a level most people have numbed themselves against. But here is the twist. Those who are most defended, who have built walls around their shadow, are terrified by the one who can sense it. And because they cannot admit, even to themselves, that you see what they deny, they must invert reality. They must say, it is you who are troubled. It is you who caused this disturbance. It is you who are the problem. Thus, projection becomes accusation, and accusation becomes blame. I recall myths that echo this pattern. Think of Oedipus, accused of bringing plague to Thebes. Though he did not consciously know his crime, he bore the guilt of the unconscious fate of the city. Think of Jesus, accused of blasphemy, condemned though he bore no violence, carrying the archetype of the scapegoat to its ultimate expression. Think of countless witches burned, not because they caused suffering, but because they revealed the unconscious fears of their community. Always the empath, the sensitive, the intuitive becomes the target of projection. Always the one who feels deeply is labeled the cause of the storm. For to silence the empath is to silence the mirror that reflects the shadow, and humanity, more often than not, would rather kill the mirror than face what it reveals. Now, let me take you deeper into the symbol of the mirror. To be an empath is to be a living mirror. Others look at you and see not you, but their own unacknowledged emotions reflected back. This is why their reactions to you are often disproportionate, why you are accused of things that have no logical connection to your behavior. It is not reason that moves them, It is the terror of their own unconscious suddenly glimpsed in your reflection. But here lies the tragedy. You too begin to see yourself through their projection. You look in the mirror they hand you and you believe their distortion. You forget the clarity of your own soul. You forget that you are not the shadow, but the reflector of shadow. This confusion is the prison of the empath, and this prison is maintained by blame, but let us not despair, for in every archetype lies the seed of transformation. The empath is not doomed to eternal scapegoating. Rather, the empath is called to awaken to the alchemical truth that the shadow reflected is not theirs, and the blame that falls is not their identity. This awakening requires courage, for it is easier to collapse into guilt than to stand against the tidal wave of projection. Yet the individuation of the empath depends on this act of standing, of saying inwardly, I will not carry what is not mine. This is not selfishness. This is not cruelty. This is alignment with truth, and only in truth can compassion flourish without destroying itself. Let me give you an image. Imagine a dream in which you are holding a vessel of water. The vessel is clear, reflecting the sky. Suddenly, people approach, pouring mud, ashes, and refuse into the vessel. They say, look, it is filthy. It is poisoned. It is your fault. And for years you believe them, carrying the dirty vessel as if it were your identity. But one day you realize the vessel was never yours to be filled with their waste. It was given to you as a mirror of purity. And in that moment, you pour out what is not yours. Wash it clean in the river of your own soul and hold it again to the light. This is the act of reclaiming your empathic gift. The blame falls away, not because the world ceases to project, but because you cease to identify with what they pour into you. The mystical truth is this: the empath is not meant to be the world's garbage collector. You are not here to be the unconscious dumping ground of others. You are here to be the witness of shadow, the mirror of truth, the awakener of unconscious pain into consciousness. And in this role, you will often be misunderstood, even vilified. But misunderstanding is not the same as guilt. Vilification is not the same as culpability. You must learn to hold the paradox, to be blamed without being guilty, to be accused without absorbing, to be misunderstood, yet remain faithful to your inner truth. This is the alchemy of the empath's journey. And here, at this point, I must turn to the image of the alchemical vessel, for it is a symbol central to this mystery. The empath is like the alchemical flask into which raw materials are placed. Fire is applied, transformation occurs, and out of the chaos comes gold. The raw materials are the projections of others, their unconscious darkness, their unacknowledged pain. The fire is the empath's sensitivity, which intensifies and heats the psychic material, and the gold is the awareness that emerges, the light of consciousness that can only be born when shadow is brought to the surface. But the danger is that the empath identifies with the raw material rather than with the vessel. You are not the darkness. You are the container in which darkness becomes light. And when you realize this, the blame no longer shackles you. it becomes fuel for transformation. You may ask, but how do I live this in the daily world, where accusations still come, where family still blames me, where relationships still twist my sensitivity into guilt? The answer is not to escape the world, but to cultivate inner discernment. Each time blame is thrown upon you, pause is breathe and ask, does this belong to me? Listen deeply. The unconscious knows, your body knows, if it is not yours. Let it pass through you, like wind through an open window. Do not clutch it, do not defend it, do not build an identity around it. Let it go. And if a fragment of it is yours, if indeed some echo of the shadow resonates within you, then embrace it, work with it, transform it, but never carry what is not yours. This is the discipline of the awakened empath. As I speak these words, I feel the weight lifting in this very room, for I sense how many of you have carried decades of unjust blame. Your shoulders bend not only under your own shadow, but under the collective shadow of families, lovers, friends, even societies that feared your sensitivity. But hear me, you were never guilty of their darkness. You were chosen, yes, to feel it, to reflect it, but not to be imprisoned by it. And now, as you awaken, you reclaim your vessel. You reclaim your role as witness rather than scapegoat. This awakening is not only psychological, it is spiritual. It is the soul's movement toward wholeness, toward individuation, towards the marriage of shadow and light. We will continue deeper still into the archetypal landscapes, where the empath's journey parallels that of the mystic, the prophet, the dreamer. For you are not merely sensitive individuals. You are initiates into a hidden path. But first, take these truths into your heart. You are not guilty of the pain you feel. You are not to blame for the wounds of others. And every accusation hurled against you is an opportunity to awaken to the archetypal drama playing through your life. Let us continue, for the journey does not end at the recognition of projection. It deepens into the mystery of why the empath carries a path so similar to the mystic, the prophet, and the visionary. You see, the empath is not merely a psychological type. The empath is a spiritual archetype across cultures and centuries. The one who feels too deeply, who perceives what others deny, who carries the weight of invisible realities, has always stood at the edge of society, revered or reviled, and this edge is where blame clings like a shadow, because the collective does not tolerate one who reveals the truth without armor. The empath's path is the prophet's path. Both mirror back what is hidden, and both are misunderstood because of it. Consider the figure of the prophet. He stands before the people, declaring what no one wants to hear, that the darkness they accuse others of lives within themselves. The prophet is rarely loved. He is mocked, silenced, stoned. Why? Because the people cannot bear to face their shadow. So too with the empath, though you may not speak like a prophet, your very presence, your silent sensing unveils the hidden pain of others. And like the prophet, you are blamed, accused of disturbing the peace, when in truth you have only revealed the storm that was already there. This is why you feel as though life itself sets you in a paradox. You heal by exposing, and yet you are punished for the very act of seeing. The mystic too shares this path. The mystic enters the depths of silence, dreams, visions, and emerges with truths that threaten the established order. Mystics are often accused of heresy, not because they are false, but because their truth unsettles. And here is the parallel. The empath unsettles not by doctrine, but by energy. You unsettle because you see too much, you feel too much. You remind people of what they hide. And in the unconscious of others, this unsettling presence translates into blame. They must find a reason for the discomfort you stir. And since they cannot admit the truth, they accuse you of being the source. In this way, you become not only a scapegoat, but also a mystic, exiled within your own life. But why must this be so? Why is sensitivity bound to suffering? The answer lies in the psyche's relentless drive for wholeness, individuation, the process by which we become who we truly are, demands that shadow be integrated, that denied aspects come into light, but most resist this process. They prefer to maintain the mask, the persona, the illusion of control. When such people encounter an empath, their unconscious seizes the opportunity to unload what they cannot face. You, as an empath, become the alchemical vessel into which the unfinished business of others is poured. This dynamic is not personal, it is archetypal. And when you recognize it as archetypal, you begin to disentangle your identity from it. You no longer say, I am to blame. Instead you say, I have been chosen to witness the shadow. This shift, subtle but radical, transforms the way you carry your gift. Let me draw you into an image, for images are the language of the unconscious. Imagine a dream in which you are walking through a vast desert. The sun burns overhead. The earth cracks beneath your feet. In the distance, you see a crowd gathered around a single figure. As you approach, you realize the figure is you, bound, accused, with voices shouting that you have brought the drought, that you have cursed the land. They point, they rage, they demand exile, and you, bewildered, you did not cause the drought. Yet the crowd grows more convinced. Suddenly, you realize the desert is not outside, it is within. The drought is their withered souls, their unacknowledged emptiness, and the accusation is the psyche's way of forcing you into the role of witness. In this moment, you awaken in the dream and say, I am not the cause of your drought. I am the mirror of it. The crowd recoils. For you have broken the spell. This is the dream image of liberation. But liberation is not merely resistance. Liberation for the empath requires an inner reorientation, a willingness to accept that your sensitivity is a sacred instrument, not a curse. The blame, though unjust, initiates you into awareness. It forces you to discern the difference between self and other, between your wound and the wound of the world, without the sting of blame. Perhaps you would never have developed the clarity to separate your essence from the projections of others. This is the paradox. The very injustice that has bound you becomes the crucible that awakens you. Yet, I know the question still lingers in your heart. How do I endure the loneliness of this path? How do I bear being blamed by those I love, misunderstood by those I care for? And here we must turn to the archetype of the wanderer. Every empath, every mystic, every prophet must walk a period of exile. The exile is not punishment, it is initiation. To step away from the noise of projection, you must find solitude. In solitude, you hear your own soul's voice again. In solitude, you rediscover the boundary between you and the other, and only then can you re-enter the world without being consumed by blame. The wanderer archetype is not forever. It is the middle path, the dark forest through which you pass before emerging into the clearing of individuation. Do not fear the exile, for in the exile you will dream new dreams. You will encounter inner figures, guides, shadows, ancestors who reveal to you the deeper meaning of your gift. You may dream of a wounded child pointing silently at its heart. That child is you, the empathic soul who learned too early to carry blame. You may dream of a healer tending the sick with radiant hands. That is also you, the archetype of the wounded healer rising. You may dream of an ancient figure with a mirror, holding it toward you. This is the self, the wholeness of your being, teaching you that your role is not to carry others' wounds, but to reflect them until they awaken. These dreams are not fantasies. They are messages from the collective unconscious guiding you to your true path. And here we must speak of ancestral wounds. Many empaths find that the blame they carry is not only from their own lifetime, it is woven through generations. Families transmit unhealed shame, unspoken rage, forbidden grief, and the empathic child becomes the inheritor of all. You may feel pain that does not belong to your story. You may sense despair older than your years. This is the ancestral shadow, the collective inheritance. And because you feel it so vividly, the family unconsciously chooses you as the one to carry it. It must be your fault, they say, for you are the one who feels it most. But in truth, you are not the origin, you are the revealer. And once you awaken to this, you can say, I release what is not mine. I honor the wound, but I do not carry it. In this act, you not only free yourself, but also free generations who have been bound by silence. The individuation of the empath is thus both personal and collective. By refusing to be the scapegoat, you break an ancient cycle. By holding the mirror without collapsing into it, you teach others to see. And this teaching is not always welcomed. Often it is resisted with anger, denial, accusation. Yet this too is part of the process, for the empath does not exist to be liked. The empath exists to awaken, and awakening, by its nature, unsettles. If you are blamed, it may be the surest sign that you are fulfilling your archetypal role. Do not mistake resistance for failure. Do not mistake blame for truth. They are only the echoes of the shadow fighting to remain unseen. As I speak, I feel the resonance of countless souls here who have lived this truth. You have been called too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic. You have been told you make others uncomfortable, that you exaggerate, that you distort. But beneath these accusations lies the deeper confession: you see too clearly what I cannot face. And so you are blamed. But listen closely, when the unconscious resists the mirror, it always begins with blame. This is not evidence of your guilt, it is evidence of your gift. In the coming movement, we shall explore how the empaths can turn this blame into strength, how the very forces that once enslaved you can be transmuted into the gold of individuation. For the empath's path is not one of perpetual suffering. It is a path of transformation leading to a consciousness so luminous that blame no longer chains it. But before we step there, let this truth settle in you, like seed in fertile soil. You are not cursed for your sensitivity. You are chosen by archetype, by destiny, to walk the path of the mirror. And though the world may blame you, the self within you blesses you, calling you toward wholeness. Now we arrive at the final movement of this unfolding mystery, where the empath steps out from under the crushing weight of blame and into the luminous field of transformation. For you cannot remain forever in the role of scapegoat. To do so would be to betray your own soul. The purpose of all you have suffered, of all the accusations unjustly hurled against you, is not to destroy you, but to initiate you into the alchemy of individuation. You are not meant to die beneath the projections of others. You are meant to rise, carrying with you the gold extracted from the crucible of pain. The transformation begins in a subtle shift of perception. Once you awaken to the archetypal nature of blame, once you recognize that it is not personal but collective, you step out of the trance. The accusations no longer define you. You begin to say, this belongs not to me, but to the shadow that refuses to see itself. And with every repetition of this inner truth, the cords that bind you to guilt loosen. What once penetrated your skin like arrows now passes by you like wind. You remain sensitive. But sensitivity is no longer a wound. It becomes sight. You see, without absorbing, you feel without identifying, you witness without carrying. This is the first step toward freedom. But freedom for the empath is not a cold withdrawal, not a hard shell of indifference. That would only invert the wound, creating a prison of isolation. No, true freedom is the integration of compassion with discernment. It is the marriage of openness and boundary. Imagine a dream in which you stand on the shore of a vast ocean. Waves crash. Voices rise from the water, calling you to drown in their sorrows. For years you dove in, swallowed their grief, mistaking it for your own. But now you learn to remain on the shore, listening, reflecting, yet grounded in your own body. You speak to the ocean. I hear you, I witness you, but I do not drown with you. And suddenly the ocean calms, for the projection has lost its power. This is the dream image of the awakened empath, the witness who reflects without being consumed. When you live from this place, something miraculous begins. The blame that once wounded you becomes a teacher. Every accusation reveals the shadow of another. Every projection points to what is unhealed. And you, rather than being crushed, ooze it as data, as symbolic truth. You no longer ask, why am I guilty? You ask, what does this accusation reveal about the collective shadow at play? In this way, the empath becomes not the victim but the analyst, the interpreter of unconscious dynamics. You stand, in Jung's words, at the threshold of the collective, unconscious, and you name what arises. This is no small task. It requires courage, humility, and the willingness to be misunderstood, but it is the path of individuation, the path of becoming who you truly are. Consider now the alchemical symbol of transformation, the vessel, the fire, the gold. You are the vessel. Life provides the fire, and the projections of others become the raw material. At first you believed you were the raw material itself, dirty, broken, guilty. But now you realize you are the container in which transformation occurs. The fire of your sensitivity does not destroy, it purifies. And what emerges is not your destruction, but your gold clarity, strength, compassion that does not self-annihilate. This is the alchemy of blame transmuted into awareness. You were never meant to remain lead. You were always destined to reveal gold. And what is this gold? It is the capacity to stand in truth even when accused. It is the ability to love without absorbing poison. It is the strength to hold a mirror to the unconscious without collapsing into it. The gold is not the absence of pain, but the integration of pain into wisdom. You, as an empath, carry within you the wisdom of suffering transmuted. You know what it is to be misunderstood, to be blamed, to be accused of what was never yours. And because of this, your compassion deepens, not the naive compassion that sacrifices itself blindly, but the mature compassion that sees clearly and still chooses to love. This is the rarest of all treasures, and it is born only through the crucible of unjust blame. Let us not forget that this transformation is not only for yourself. When you refuse to carry the projections of others, when you awaken from the scapegoat role, you break a cycle that has bound humanity for millennia. The scapegoat ritual lives in families, in communities, in nations. Entire peoples are blamed for the suffering of others, cast out, destroyed, because the collective cannot face its own shadow. By breaking free within yourself, you contribute to the breaking of this cycle in the collective. Your individuation is never solitary. It ripples outward into the unconscious of humanity, planting seeds of awakening. To heal yourself as an empath is to heal something in the collective story. Yet I know, even as I speak, that some part of you still trembles. For blame is not easily forgotten. The voice of accusation lingers in your psyche, whispering doubt. It returns in moments of weakness, telling you that perhaps you really are the cause of everyone's pain. And so the journey of the empath is not a single act of liberation, but a continual discipline of remembrance. Each day you must remember, this does not belong to me. Each day you must cleanse the vessel, pour out what was poured into you, and hold it again to the light. This is not weakness. This is sacred practice. The mystics called it prayer. The alchemists called it opus. Jung called it individuation. Call it what you will, it is the daily work of freedom. There is one more image I must leave with you, for it carries the essence of your transformation. Imagine a dream in which you stand in a circle of fire. Around you are figures shouting blame, pointing, condemning. The fire burns bright, but you do not flinch. Instead, you raise a mirror high above your head. The mirror catches the firelight and reflects it back. Suddenly, the accusers see themselves in the mirror, see their rage, their grief, their wounds. Some recoil, some weep, some turn away, and you stand unburned, luminous, no longer a scapegoat, but a bearer of light. This is the final stage of the empath's journey, the transformation of blame into illumination. You are no longer the vessel of guilt, you are the mirror of truth. So, my friends, if you have ever been blamed for pain you did not cause, if you have ever carried wounds that were never yours, know this: you are not guilty. You were chosen by Archetype to reflect the shadow, to awaken the unconscious, to transmute projection into awareness. The path is hard, the blame is cruel, but the destiny is luminous. You are not here to be destroyed, you are here to become whole, and in becoming whole, you offer to the world a gift. It cannot yet name the gift of a soul that sees without absorbing, loves without annihilating, and stands in truth even when accused. Remember this as you leave this gathering. You are not the wound you carry. You are the vessel in which wounds are transformed. You are not the blame that binds you. You are the mirror that reveals the shadow. And though the world may not thank you, though it may misunderstand you, though it may still accuse you, within you the self whispers, you are free. And in that whisper lies your gold,